But would you ever talk to your patients like this?
No.
The Dr. Oz show was one of the most popular daytime shows for years, but that was until early last year when it got canceled. Since then, people have started to realize that Dr. Oz has been involved in a ton of major scandals, from spreading dangerous misinformation to his bizarre political campaign. The real reason the show was canceled will shock you, and a lot of people don't realize just how many scandals Dr. Oz has been attached to. Even on the show itself, he was basically promoting snake oil the whole time, but it's also not like we just found out about that now. He's been saying really questionable stuff pretty much his whole career, even outside of his show. For example, in 2014, when he went on a radio show and implied that having adult intimate relations with your family members is completely okay. He actually got a question about it from a listener in a Q&A segment. The listener somehow apparently got themselves into a precarious situation involving their second cousin. That was already pretty eyebrow raising. But what Dr. Oz said about it was somehow even worse. He said that as long as it was a second cousin, that kind of thing was completely okay. It might be even fine with a first cousin too. That was pretty bad already, but things somehow got even worse from there. Dr. Oz actually went on to explain that the reason you're not supposed to do that kind of thing with your family is because of genetics. The whole argument there is obviously that you could end up having a baby with someone who's related to you, and that could be bad news for the baby's health because of how genetics work. But what Dr. Oz was saying was that your second cousin is far enough in the family tree from you that it shouldn't matter too much, and that may be the case, but obviously genetics really shouldn't be the only issue to consider here. It's definitely kind of weird to be doing those kind of things with your cousin, especially if you were close as kids and basically grew up together. But Dr. Oz apparently doesn't really see that problem. He did say that you probably shouldn't do things with your parents or your siblings, and then he went off about how you're just not going to be attracted to your close relatives anyway. And as an example, he gave his own relationship with his kids. He said that apparently he smells really bad to his kids, especially whenever he exercises, and according to him, that's because their basic instincts are making them dislike his smell so that they won't be attracted to him. But the thing is, nothing that he said really ruled out the option that he just smells bad when he exercises. He actually tried to get ahead of that rumor. According to him, that can't be the case because his wife says he doesn't smell bad to her, which, let's be honest, really does not prove anything. But this is not even the weirdest or funniest thing Dr. Oz has done. He actually ran for the US Senate in 2022. He ran as the Republican candidate for the seat in Pennsylvania, but the thing is, Dr. Oz is actually from New Jersey, and obviously you don't need to be born in the state to run for office there, but many people have brought up the fact that Dr. Oz doesn't actually even live in Pennsylvania. He initially even used his in-laws' address in Pennsylvania to register to vote there 2 years before he ran for the Senate, which really just sounds like he was already planning to run at that point, so he had to start making moves to prepare. He announced that he was running the following year, and he only actually bought a house in Pennsylvania afterwards so that he could say that he lives there. And obviously it was pretty difficult to find out where he actually lived, but there was a suspicion that he didn't actually move to Pennsylvania at all. He just pretended to have done that so that he could run for office there, but as far as we know, he's pretty much always lived in New Jersey, and that didn't change when he ran for office. His opponent in the elections actually used this to run some pretty hilarious campaigns against him. He hired Snooki from Jersey Shore to make a video talking all about how Dr. Oz is so closely related to New Jersey. He also sold bumper stickers that said Dr. Oz from New Jersey, and he even petitioned that Dr. Oz should be in the New Jersey Hall of Fame. Being from New Jersey might well be what ended up losing Dr. Oz the elections in the end. That and his grocery shopping video, which was an absolute disaster. He posted the video as part of his campaign, and it was honestly hilarious. Not many people saw it initially, but then it took off and went viral a few months later because there was just so much wrong with it. In the video, Dr. Oz was grocery shopping, or at least pretending to. He started the video by explaining that he was at the store to get some vegetables because his wife was in the mood for crudités, but at this point, he had already made his first mistake. He said that he was shopping at Wagner's. But the thing is, there's no such thing as a Wagner store in Pennsylvania. The store he was in is actually called Redner's, which is a pretty popular Pennsylvanian chain store. What probably happened was that he mixed the word Wagner's with another chain store. This one is actually pretty common in New Jersey, so you can probably imagine that this did not help his claims about living in Pennsylvania. But then he got to the vegetable part. He needed to get a bunch of different types of fresh vegetables as well as some dipping sauces. So he started picking out his veggies and complaining about how much they cost. At the very end, he signed off by saying that Joe Biden was to blame for the high prices, which was just not really fair or accurate at all. High prices of food and people not being able to afford to eat because of that is basically a very serious problem. But the reason for it are complex, and blaming just one person for it is just inaccurate, even if that person is the president of the United States. But the problems with the video didn't even end there. Dr. Oz counted a sum total of $20 for everything he needed for the crudités, but he actually got several of the prices wrong because he looked at the wrong label, and the ingredients we got were also ever so slightly wrong for crudité. Altogether, the whole video was just a complete disaster. At this point, his campaign wasn't really going great, but then unfortunately, his opponent suffered a stroke, and somehow Dr. Oz managed to use that opportunity to make himself look even worse. He basically started picking at his opponent for needing time off to recover. He also said that if his opponent had ever eaten a vegetable in his life, he probably wouldn't have been having a stroke. That honestly sounded like some pathetic high school bully technique, but it was coming from Dr. Oz, a grown adult and a doctor at that. He really should know stuff about strokes and what causes them. He should know that there are multiple factors involved that can cause a stroke, and reducing it to just not enough vegetable thing was really just plain wrong. It really sounded like he was just trying to get the last word in the debate about vegetables that started because of his crudité video. But Dr. Oz has pretty much always had some extremely questionable medical take. That's another thing about him that's actually really concerning. His entire show was actually medically super questionable. The claims he made on there were just not scientifically proven most of the time. There was actually a study made at one point about just that. A group of scientists looked at the medical advice he gave on his show and investigated how much of it was actually backed by science, and the results just did not look good for Dr. Oz at all. They found that at least half of the recommendations he gave were completely unsupported, and some of them even had incredible research going against what Dr. Oz was recommending. So you definitely shouldn't take anything he said on the show as fact. In fact, other doctors have been questioning whether someone like him should even have a medical license at all. A doctor who gives out false advice like this can actually be dangerous to people's health. Honestly, it's probably a good thing that he didn't end up getting into the Senate, and his campaign was actually what caused his show to be canceled, because as a candidate, public TV wasn't allowed to give him extra airtime over his opponent, so they had to cancel his show. And even though the elections are now over, the Dr. Oz show hasn't been renewed, and it doesn't look like it will be anytime soon. But anyway, what do you guys think? Do you want the Dr. Oz show to come back? And what did you think about his political campaign? Let me know in the comments below.